think that's why franchising is a fantastic way of expanding internationally, because actually the whole idea of international master franchising is finding partners in countries that are very, very good at what they do, and they know all the local issues, and they'll sort it out. The point is to sit down with those people and say, okay, here we have the brand, here we have a global brand, but what changes do we need to make in your country to make sure that it's successful?
Welcome to this week's Escape Your Limits podcast. Our guest today has an extensive experience heading up the European expansion for several international fitness brands, which include Fitness First, Anytime Fitness, and Tribe. His recent venture is as the president of Energy Fitness Europe, heading up the regional expansion of the brand whilst dealing with the challenges of a post-pandemic world. In our interview, we explore the opportunities and lessons that go along with expanding a fitness chain throughout Central Europe, how Central European gym design differs from the UK and the US, and what the rest of the world can learn from these differences, and why the fitness industry could be missing out by turning their back on one of the most loyal and affluent demographics. So please welcome the president of Energy Fitness Iberia, Mr. Rod Hill, to this week's Escape Your Limits podcast.
Mr. Rod Hill, thank you so much for joining us late on a Friday evening in Spain.
Yes, it's 7:45 here, Matt. So that's a first for me for a couple of years. So I'll do my best. I was saying I've got my air conditioning cranked up here, and I'll try to stay as sharp as I can for you for the next hour. But thanks for having me. Thanks for having me on.
Excellent. It's been a while actually since we chatted. It's a shame, as I was saying, it's a shame that we couldn't share a nice glass of chilled white wine for the interview. Maybe another time.
Well, we can. I'm in the right country for good wine, and I know you've been in Barcelona a few times in the past, back in the good old 90s when we were doing the Fitness First clubs over here. So I know there's some good wine over here, but.
Absolutely. Well, as I was preparing for the interview, I was kind of thinking, because we go back quite a long way actually, and but before you and I connected, you were kind of wearing spandex doing aerobics classes. Was that correct?
Yeah, I was. I got into the industry on the back of. I was a rugby player and actually got into the fitness industry from a sports background. And I decided that I was going to, get into the gym business, and decided to train up as a group exercise instructor, and got involved in Fitness First in the very first club in Bournemouth in 1992, which then proved to be the sort of base of the expansion of Fitness First from 1992. I was very lucky to be in the right place at the right time. I think back in the first Fitness First, the big goal of the founder, Mike Balfour, was probably to have 6 to 10 clubs. And I remember having that conversation. And then 12 years later, we'd done over 350 clubs around 25 to 30 countries. So I forget how many countries, but it was certainly a very exciting chapter in my career in the industry, and really gave me, I cut my teeth and learned what I learned very much to that, thanks to that expansion and being able to develop within the business.
Yeah, I'm glad you've sort of raised that Fitness First, because it was one of the things that I wanted to kind of really use to sort of shape the conversation. Because obviously, I think even myself, I was back in those days, I was delivering equipment, and you were one of my customers, and it's quite an interesting time, really, because I from an outsider, it kind of seemed as though from my perspective, it looked like there was this kind of very successful company, had these huge ambitions of global domination, but going into Europe, it was kind of it was quite, I don't know what the best word, without being disrespectful, but it was. It was quite entertaining, and I suppose, like us, everybody sees Europe as being, well, let's go out and take on Europe, and it's just like what we're doing in the UK. But from what I understood, it wasn't exactly the same. So, as this is something that I guess has developed into one of the areas that you've been become quite an expert in. What was some of the lessons that you got from being a British company and then trying to tackle France and Spain and Italy and Holland back in those early days?
Yeah, well, it was pretty exhilarating stuff. It was all, and it's quite interesting, or a coincidence that we're talking about this on the day that F45 have gone to the stock market, because back in those days we were on the London Stock Exchange alongside probably 10, if not more, if my memory serves me well, UK listed companies. And just to say, I've got an incredibly positive feeling right now for the fitness industry, which we can probably talk about later. So I don't want to digress from your question, but it's interesting that, we had to go out and expand around Europe, because one of the great things about going to the markets, and great for F45, I think they're doing a great job with what they've done, and I wish them all the success. One of the things that going onto the market for us caused us was a little bit of short-term planning, because you have to please the stock market with your numbers, and so sometimes the big challenge is planning for the future, but dealing with the present, which is making sure that your numbers are always you're going to report quarterly to the stock market, and those numbers have to be good, otherwise your shareholders and your share price drops down, as obviously we know. So just to say that, I mean, we were actually pushed to Europe very quickly, because a lot of our investors at the time, a lot of the institutional investors, saw a saturation point in the UK, which is quite ironic, isn't it, when you talk about it now? Because back then penetration rates were much, much lower than they are now, and this has always been a massive point of contention for our industry, that we think fitness is everywhere, but when you look at countries, the highest penetration in the world is Scandinavian countries with nearly 20%, and we're still not up to 20% in the UK or Spain or even in the United States. So we pushed out into Europe, and the first point of call was Spain, which is really why I'm still here now. As you remember, probably, I ended up spearheading a lot of that European development, and I was, these countries, we were pioneers going into Spain, into France, into Italy, into the Benelux, and we created a pretty successful business, considering what we didn't know at the time. But of course, to answer your question, it was a baptism of fire for me. I was one of the few people in the company that spoke any reasonable level of Spanish, so I actually put my hand up and said, "Let's go down to Madrid, and you can do Spain." And credit to Mike Balfour. I mean, he really gave us a lot of opportunities to fail and learn, and we certainly did that. But it was learning about cultures, learning about different points of view, and how to go into countries and adapt a model in a country. Certainly, take France and Spain and Italy, Germany, and the Benelux. Northern European countries tend to be similar, and Southern European countries tend to be similar in certain ways. So it's been it was a huge learning curve for us. And what it taught me was that you've got to find the differences. You've got to go into countries and find those small. I would say now that when you go into a country internationally, most things are the same, apart from 10%. And you've got to find out what those 10% changes are that you need to make in a brand, because even as small as 10%, it can cause you an awful lot of trouble if you're not going to recognize those cultural differences that you need to address.
One of the things that was I remember was quite interesting, mainly because I used to turn up in these places and deliver dumbbells into what was shopping centres at that time, particularly in Spain, and obviously the choice of location is a real big deal. And I remember, back in those days, there were some great locations that were massively successful, but then there were some that were just absolutely awful in a number of countries. So in terms of, when people are looking to expand into other countries, what are some of the big lessons, I suppose, that you've got in terms of locations, and how do those differ, say, from the UK to Spain in terms of, where, people's habits in terms of where they would go and what would be more kind of convenient as it relates to fitness?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, you're probably referring to the La Maquinista in Barcelona, which was probably the worst location I ever had to try to operate in my life. It was a massive mistake at the time. It was a fantastic destination mall, but there wasn't anybody living around. So we've improved a lot since those days in site location. Certainly using profiling applications. I personally use GeoBlink in Spain, which you can pinpoint your immediate population, not just in terms of numbers, but also in terms of density of population, disposable income, and the spending habits of people in certain areas. I mean, one of the massive advantages in Spain is that you've got a high density of population in the inner cities, and although like many countries, COVID has affected the work patterns of people, and there are less people in the offices here as there are, I'm sure, in the US and in London. In Barcelona, for example, you've got some extremely dense population, so you're looking at walking distance rather than going by car, because people live in a certain area. And I would say, one of the main differences in a country like Spain and probably France and Italy as well, is that people want everything on their doorstep. So, you could be looking in the United States, you'd be looking at maybe a different demographic, because a lot of the cities are spread out rather than condensed and with this concentrated density. So, you have strip malls in the US that have been very successful for chains like Anytime Fitness and Snap. But in Spain, you're gonna go into the inner cities to find those locations, because you just don't have the density of population maybe outside of those areas. So, it's an interesting one.
And has that experience, because you've been with Anytime and Tribe and Fitness First in your early days, and now with Energy, has some of those lessons kind of shaped in terms of how you would build brands in when you're entering markets, some of the decisions that you make in terms of where to start and where to expand from?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you need to have a few big failures in life with those kind of locations to sort of, imprint it in your mind, not to make that same mistake again. And let's hope we don't do that. But yeah, absolutely. I think I look at, well, let's take a model like Energy Fitness. I've set up the business in Spain with my partners George Houtenbos and Eric Kakabian, and we've got an ambitious plan to roll out Energy Fitness in Spain over the next 5 to 7 years. We have quite an ambitious plan, and we would certainly look at take Spain, for example. I mean, there's a big question here about group exercise. We always felt in Spain, you need to offer more group exercise when you come into the country. So what we've done in Spain is that we've created a model. We've taken the Energy Fitness model from the UK, and we've increased the size slightly in the UK from the UK, which we've now got a bit more flexibility here to build clubs up to about 1,000 meters, which I think in your currency is 10,000 square feet. And within that model, what I've kind of worked out over the last few years is that the market here wants to do group exercise. Group exercise. I've got an affection for group exercise, because that's where I came from as a trainer and as a personal trainer back in the day. And I've always seen and really lived the experience of teaching classes to people. And when I came to Spain, it was very, very clear from early on that a lot of clubs that aren't offering group exercise don't do as well. And I would say even now in Spain that probably up to 50% of the people come to gyms just to do group exercise classes. So it's a cultural thing that's very strong here. And I would say it's the same in France and Italy. So Southern European countries tend to have that similar trait when it comes to developing brands. And I think, we've also got in Spain, you've got a different culture when it comes to the day. So it's quite funny, isn't it? Because people talk about Spain and a lot of people say, okay, it's like the mañana thing, tomorrow, and it's the siesta and everything like that, which is actually a total myth and built around a misunderstanding. Is there a siesta in Spain? Well, if you live in Barcelona or Madrid, Barcelona is a Catalan capital and Madrid is obviously the capital of Spain. And, can you go and have a lie down in the afternoon? Well, you can't, the life just isn't like that. But what does happen in Spain is that people take 2 hours for lunch. And doing the 2 hours for lunch means that they work out in those 2 hours. So if you have a gym with not many showers, you've got a lot of people working out during the lunchtime and they need to shower and they need to go back to the office. So that was one of the other things that we had to look at addressing, certainly with a convenience fitness model. And the other thing is that, to make up for those 2 hours, the day is a lot longer. So for me in Spain, the afternoon is from 4 o'clock until 8 o'clock. And it's even acceptable in some cases to call people at 9 o'clock. So the whole idea of these cultural things have a reason, and usually it's because of the heat and the weather, or this has developed culturally over years. But when you get into international expansion, you sort of understand why these stereotypes come in and why people think about certain things. But there's usually an explanation for it. And I remember back in the 90s, we opened a club in Cordoba in the south of Spain, which you might have visited in your
several times.
Yes, well, it's the hottest city in Europe. Cordoba has the hottest average temperatures in Europe. It's a little bit like, it's not quite Phoenix, but it's not far off. My sister-in-law lives in Phoenix, and they're suffering now, I can say, with the heat this year when it's normally very hot. But so Cordoba is somewhere between Arizona and New Mexico type heat. It's over 45 degrees for, quite a number of days during July and August. And I remember we did the pre-sale down there back in the 90s. We did the pre-sale until about 2 o'clock. Then the manager would come and say to me, let's go and have lunch. And after that, go back to the hotel, have a lie down and relax because it's going to be 45, 48 degrees today. Which I think, sorry, I'm talking in European terms here, so I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit, but it's a lot. It's a lot. You then go back out in the evening at about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and you're on the stand until nearly midnight. And then you have your dinner, and everybody's out in the street until about 2 o'clock in the morning. And then you go to bed and do the next thing the next day. So all these patterns it always makes sense in the end. So, the thing about expansion with brands is understanding that and making sure that you don't fight it, because for them it's not strange. What I've realized, when you expand with companies, UK companies and US companies, we tend to want to put our kind of mentality into that country, and that doesn't work very well. And I think that's why franchising is a fantastic way of expanding internationally, because actually the whole idea of international master franchising is finding partners in countries that are very, very good at what they do, and they know all the local issues, and they'll sort it out. The point is to sit down with those people and say, okay, here we have the brand, here we have a global brand, but what changes do we need to make in your country to make sure that it's successful? So I've probably learned that more than anything, that you've got to do that. You've got to do that exercise. And one of the things I'll say, look, is there a benefit of having a cookie cutter, everything the same? When you walk into a Starbucks around the world, or you walk into a McDonald's, do you know where you are? Well, yes, of course you do. And there is advantage in that in global franchising. Of course there is. There's a familiarity. There's that sense of being at home if you're traveling for people. And there's a very nice opportunity to have reciprocity memberships where people who are traveling around the world can go into any of your clubs and use them. That's a fantastic thing to have. But I would say that, if you go into McDonald's, I don't know if you've been in McDonald's in Spain for a while, Matt, because I've seen you in the last few weeks looking quite lean and in shape. So I do go to McDonald's more in Spain since I came here. And I'll tell you why, because if you go to McDonald's in Spain, you can get a beer and you can get a tuna salad. And you can get actually 5 different types of salad: goat's cheese salad, tuna salad, and everything else. So when my son finishes a rugby match, we used to go to the local McDonald's because, he's doing a lot of training. He can have a McDonald's once a week. There's no problem in that for me. And I would have a salad and a beer. So Why would you serve beer in McDonald's in Spain and not in the UK? Well, being Brits, we know why you wouldn't do that in the UK, because you'd probably have people drinking pints and pints of beer. But culturally, the Spanish people drink 1 or 2 glasses of wine a day. They might drink what we call a caña, which is a small beer, but they'll have 1 or 2. So if I'm with British friends here and we're on the beach and someone opens a bottle of wine, you'd probably finish the bottle of wine before you left. The Spanish don't. They have a glass and they go. So, that's a good example. So in McDonald's in Spain, you get beer and you get a tuna salad. So the next time any of your listeners are in Spain, check it out because it's quite interesting. And also the design, they've got the Mac cafes now going in. It's got a very Europeanized look and feel to it. So you can buy croissants and pastries and you're getting pretty decent coffee. And also if you go into Starbucks, you'll get croissants with jamón ibérico, which is, if you haven't had jamón ibérico, it's one of the best, if not, I think it's the best ham in the world from the south of Spain. And, in the croissants in Starbucks in Barcelona or in Madrid, you get jamón ibérico and local produce. There's an orange juice machine squeezing the juice. And there's some subtle differences.
Thank you for supporting the Escape Your Limits podcast. If you're thinking about creating a unique and engaging fitness space to take your fitness to the next level, then we have you covered. Escape Fitness design and manufacture some of the most innovative, attractive, and durable functional training and free weight equipment used by many of the best trainers and fitness brands across the globe. As a valued listener, we are offering you a 10% discount off many of the products on our website. You can check out the full range by going to escapefitness.com and use the code DUMBBELL. That's escapefitness.com using the code DUMBBELL. That's it for me. Please enjoy the rest of this interview.
Picking up just on that point about group exercise, I always remember that, both in Spain and Italy, the time I spent with you is that group X was a really, really big part of it. But it's, I suppose if you're creating like a traditional brand where you are trying to expand and create a lot of efficiencies in operations, does that create challenges where you have to make those adjustments in order to be successful? What's the trade-off, and where do you kind of draw the line in terms of saying, well, look, we want to be in 52 or 100 countries around the world, because my guess is in Asia, you're going to have even more differences. Is it a case of where if you want to do that, you have to really make a lot of changes, or can you kind of get that balance where it's like, look, this is the model, but we're just going to tweak, maybe 10% of it?
Yeah, well, we're doing it in Spain with energy, because we agreed that in our agreement that when we started at the outset, when we were discussing this, and we felt, George, my partner here, felt, and myself felt that the model needs a little bit more. We felt that after COVID, we're going to be entering into an opportunity. Look, I know the industry in a lot of countries has been hurting, and the same in Spain. And we're fortunate enough to be starting up now, where hopefully we've sort of seen the worst of everything, and we can sort of move forward. And what I'd say is that we felt that you're absolutely right. Franchises have to be fairly easy to run, but you get to a point where you start to think, well, hang on a minute. We need to keep gyms relevant. You've got the boutique market as a challenge. You've got digital online platforms. So we've got to go back to I believe we've got to go back to an experience economy within the gyms. We've been using this term for some time now. And I think really that the bigger box models have a great opportunity. And we certainly see that in this box in a box model, which we're actually going to launch here in Spain, in Barcelona, which we're now pre-selling the club now, which is quite interesting. I'll give you some feedback on that. But the idea is that we've created a slightly bigger model where we're going to have the yard, which is our signature cross-training class. We're going to have a group exercise studio, which is going to cover dance, aerobics, and spinning. And we're also going to have a mindfulness studio where we're going to bring in some fusion of yoga, Pilates, and some meditation recovery type workouts. And with that, we're going to have a nice strength and free weight area and cardio area. And we're going to have trainers. And we've decided that we think that needs to happen for gyms to be able to offer and stay relevant over the coming 5 to 7 years by offering members these different experiences within the club. And if you're looking at, gyms that are good for proximity, for convenience, we love that model. The energy model in the UK is typically 600 or 6,000 square feet, and sometimes it's 8,000 square feet. But the difference is if we have an 8,000 square feet gym in the UK, what we normally do is we only put more gym space in there. So the actual membership uptake isn't necessarily much greater. So we're very sure that we are going to have much more success with offering more experiences in group exercise. And I'll explain before we have this hook and yield. And one of the reasons why myself and George bought into the energy model, the fact that, we got on very well with Jan, who sadly passed away, as many of your listeners will know. We really bought into this hook and yield. We really like the idea of having a classic membership, a wow membership, and an epic membership to coincide with our box-in-a-box model. So what we're doing in Spain is that we decided that the classic model is priced at around the same as the low-cost market here in Spain. So if people who look at price as being a priority and don't need extra help particularly, and they're very gym savvy, they can come in and buy a classic. It's fantastic. We give them support. Of course we can, but they normally get on with it. Then we have the wow, which includes all the studio classes, unlimited studio classes within that package. And then we have an epic membership in Spain, where we're going to include personal training in that epic membership category. So that's going to be priced at about 150 euros a month. So you can see that we've got something for everybody inside the box. A little bit like now, I haven't been flying much in the last year and a half, as most of us haven't, but, it's very, very normal now. We have a very successful airline that was developed in Barcelona, now owned by British Airways, which is Vueling. And, if you want to go on most carriers now, you can reserve the front line. You can have speedy boarding, priority boarding. But if you're going on a weekend with your friends and you're not really bothered, you just sit anywhere and you don't care if you're on and off the planes particularly fast. So it's a little bit, real-time pricing that we're looking at. But we think that model works very well with with the box-in-the-box experience model. And so far, it's been received very well. And just to finally go back, does that mean that it's going to be more difficult for a franchisee to run? Yes, it does. It does. But you know what? I think we have to make that jump now, because I don't think we've got to stay relevant. We've got to keep members motivated and give variety to our members. And I think group exercise, I've seen the power of group exercise when you have great trainers, you have great content. And let's face it, we can partner with great providers of content, great providers of education. We won't be doing that in-house, because I also believe that we're in the era of collaboration, where we've got to really, partner up with the best people who deliver mindfulness programming and education and training. Obviously Les Mills have been doing this for many, many years and can bring that as well. So we're very sure that I'm prepared to take that risk, because I think that this is going to be something that will increase the average yield in clubs. It will keep members more motivated. We know that members who do more group exercise stay longer in our clubs. So I think it's a win-win situation. And for someone like myself, who's been involved in chains where we ran group exercise, where you motivate your trainers, I don't see that as particularly difficult. So we're committed to making it successful. But it is a little bit of extra work. You're right.
You mentioned about the experience economy, and it's something that's come up quite a lot in some of the interviews that we've had over the years. And you and I have also, for many years, sort of talked about the design and how, certainly within Spain, as a specific example, how design is very, very important. And even in some of the low cost models over there, it's combining that sort of European design with the low cost, but not necessarily compromising on the design. Looking at the sort of world, if you look at the US and the UK, and I am generalizing, I know there's exceptions, but in general, the US and UK is the design experience is fairly basic. As you go down into Southern Europe, Spain, Italy, South America, and even in Asia, to be honest, I've seen this, is that there's a real big emphasis on design. And when you go in there, you feel different. And you gave the example of Starbucks even there. Two questions on this. One is, how much of a value do you think there is on design as it relates to the markets that you operate in? And do you think this is something that could almost be reversed out? Whereas you look at Spain and South America as almost like emerging markets compared to UK and the US. Do you think there's some real important lessons that those markets can learn from and almost, take those ideas and sort of make their businesses better in those other markets?
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. It's an interesting question, and well, the evidence of that is that actually when we developed the Anytime clubs in Spain, if you look at the Anytime fitness model that they've now used globally, that was more or less developed in Barcelona. Because what we did in Barcelona, if you go into a retail outlet, if you go into one of the Inditex group, which is Zara and Massimo Dutti, which is another story, a huge Spanish success story, by the way, in retailing and affordable luxury brands, affordable quality. Spain does that very well. So does Italy, but Spain's done very well in the last few years with this. And so we always, there's no carpets in Spain. So when someone said to me, and I can tell you how many conversations I've had where people say, "What, you don't have carpets in the gym?" I say, "Have you ever seen a carpet in somebody's house in Spain?" So you don't have carpets. But what we do brushed concrete floors. And we don't do false ceilings. For many years, I think even 10 years ago, we weren't doing false ceilings. So it's a great example because false ceilings cost you a lot of money. And if you leave a ceiling open with spotlights and some great, lighting, some very nice retail lighting, focus lights, or you want to put a bit of, whatever, colored lights and everything else, you get a much better effect anyway. But you're actually saving money. You're not spending more money. So a lot of the time, the industrial, finish and look, which is very, very normal here, costs you a lot less. So we actually were making clubs for less money and making them look spectacular. So when you've got brushed concrete floors, open ceilings, exposed air conditioning ducts, and you've got some good ideas about lighting and how to make that look good, that's very, very economical, an economical way of getting a very, very good look and feel. So I agree with you. I think I'm also heading up the international expansion for Energy Fitness as well as being the master franchise for Spain and Portugal. And I think what's going to happen is that absolutely we're already getting influence from here, and that influence will go out into the international. And I'm sure, Spain has a lot more in common with Italy and France than the UK does in some of those things. So, and France and Italy are two markets that we're having conversations about right now. So as our next port of call, if you like. So absolutely, you're right. The design thing that's going on here in Barcelona is very interesting.
So how do you translate that in from a brand perspective then? Because, branding is, there's a lot of elements to a brand and the story. And certainly in my experience, that the design and the experience and in some cases, the product, you mentioned group exercise and no group exercise. So how do you sort of stay true to your brand values when you kind of have potentially those differences in other countries? Or is it something that you kind of have to, as you expand your business, you have to recognize, and then over time you sort of try and bring them together at some point where it sounds like that's kind of where Starbucks may sort of go, because I know you go to some dodgy Starbucks, but in a lot of cases their design experience and that is a lot more premium probably than what it used to be.
Yeah, well, our brand values will never change in energy, even if our clubs start to look slightly different, because the pillars of the energy model, where you belong, we've identified different, the whole culture is based around backing the underdog, if you like, making sure that we're focusing on the different types of exerciser and profile of people that we get in our clubs, and making sure that we're giving that service support and creating that culture around the group, and that will never go away. As you know, I suppose Starbucks, they write your name on your cup. That should carry on in all the Starbucks. The bathroom should be spotlessly clean and smell nice. And but saying that, if you walk into a Starbucks in Madrid, there might be some slight differences of tile. There might be some slight differences in the color. Well, the color scheme probably not, but there'll certainly be some tile. The logo won't be different. The logo is obviously untouchable. So there are aspects of a brand that you don't want to touch, but there are other aspects really from a design point of view that you want to, that you could actually touch. But, obviously in franchising, you're limited to at the end to make it an affordable model for as many people as possible. So you've got to know what market you're actually selling your concept into. From our point of view, we want to make certain changes to our model, but actually we're doing a modular model where if you said, okay, I want to open a 6,000 square foot gym in Barcelona, and I just want to have the gym and one studio, well, we would do that. That's not a problem. But what we're giving franchisees an opportunity to do is to say, okay, if they have a slightly larger budget, they can add 1, 2, 3, or 4 studios to the gym model. So it's going to depend a little bit on every franchisee. So when you're franchising, you've got to be a little bit careful that you don't want to make you don't want it to cost so much that you can't sell the franchise into the market that you're speculating in.
Yeah. So in terms of the different models, then you've certainly been involved in businesses that have been very successful in developed markets and then taken them to less developed markets. How do you, how do you get that timing right? So if you look at the boutique market as an example, then premium price really. You're paying a lot per session compared to say some of the low cost clubs. You may be paying more for a single session than you could be in some cases for some of these, for a monthly charge at a low cost club potentially. So how do you sort of get that timing right, in terms of you're talking personal training and group exercise as an example. How do you sort of get that timing right in terms of when some of those markets are really ready for it? Or again, do you have to adapt that sort of offering and pricing, or is it a case, as you did with Tribe probably, is you kind of felt that yes, even though the low costs were sort of fairly dominant in that market, that there was space for a more of a premium price type of offering?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think our industry has been a little bit guilty of being generalized, being dominated a little bit by price. And I've always felt that, if you follow the retail world, the retailers, normally ask people if they want to have something better or something, upselling something. So if you start to only sell on price, then we're sort of heading towards a commodity market in the gym industry. And I think the rise in the boutiques has shown us that a lot of people want something better and are prepared to pay quite a lot more for something that they love, So there's definitely, the boutiques have ridden that wave and they filled the gap, I think, over the last, 5 to 6 years, prior to COVID. And I don't think that's going to change. I think, boutique fitness is going to be here to stay. I think there's going to be, there's going to be winners and losers in that category. There's going to be well-run businesses and not so well-run businesses. I've been pretty clear about, I think you've got to have recurring revenue in a boutique to scale it. If you're thinking about franchising, pay as you go is very, very difficult to do if you want to scale a boutique business globally. Because why would you give away something that the fitness industry's had as a total advantage in the retail world? When you don't need to do that. So all the great things about boutiques, about community, about personalization, about design, about having that intense experience with like-minded people is a fantastic thing that boutiques are continuing to do in many cases. What doesn't work for me is, the recurring revenue, the pay as you go. If you're going to sell a franchise to somebody who's going to try to drive all their cash in the last few days of the month, it's going to be difficult. And then you start again the next month from zero. You start again. And as I'm sure you know, when you build up a recurring revenue line, you lose some members along the way, of course, and some people will pay for packages. But if you can get the majority to pay by subscription, then you're going to build that security for a franchisee. You're going to give that recurring revenue comfort that so many investors into fitness got involved in fitness in the first place. So I never quite understood that, and I've seen some great models around the world that have got great concepts, great owners, great passionate people, but they just didn't have that recurring revenue. It's caused them some trouble. So, but I think the boutique space will only grow. This is a great opportunity for the industry. Just repeat me the question again, Matt. Sorry, I've forgotten where I was.
So it was again. It was just really in terms of the. Now you've kind of put my mind's on the next question, so I'll get Scott to sort of edit that bit out. But it was just really like. I'll come back to you. I'll have to come back to that. So we'll let one out. But so in terms of the in terms of boutiques, let's talk about that for a moment. So where does that sort of concept sit in Central Europe in terms of its evolution, and I suppose what are some of the things that have been learned in terms of that model? Is it a very strong model in Europe, particularly as we're coming off the back of a pandemic? Is that model strong? Is there changes that need to be made? Is it going to become like what you guys are doing? Is that going to kind of work a little bit better where it's within another club? How do you view that market coming off the pandemic? And I suppose that as a model being relatively new in Southern Europe compared to probably where it is in the US at the moment? Yeah,
well, it's an interesting question. I think I like the box in the box because that's why we're doing it here. So I think that could be quite interesting for the industry. I think after COVID, I think prior to COVID, the growth in boutiques was very much based on major cities, around the world, LA, London, New York. And what we found, coming out of those cities, it was slightly different when you get over to Europe, even in cities like Barcelona and Madrid. So there's certainly a bit of a bubble, I think, in some of the cities around the world, and it's going to be more challenging to go out into the provinces and to go out into Europe, for example. But it's not impossible. But I think that's why the model of recurring revenue is always going to work better for this model. So where it is at the moment, it's still very young in Europe, but it's growing fast. I mean, you're seeing different brands day to day, springing up in different modalities across the board. There's a lot of hit studios that are coming up. I think, if you're going to go into the boutique space now, you've got to be authentic. You've got to think about what you're offering the market. You've got to go in there with something very compelling. And I think it would be something that maybe doesn't just go for all the 18 to 30 younger millennials, and somebody opens a boutique which encompasses all the different age groups. And at my time at the moment, which I might tell you later my age, but I've always been completely surprised that we as an industry can never get that 50 plus market. And we're all fishing in the same pond for the same younger people in the industry. I'm 57, and I know that because I'm actually 2% of the global membership for fitness clubs. So there's only 2% of people like me. And I know you've had a milestone just recently, Matt, which I don't know if you're going to give that away, but I think you crossed a milestone. I'm a bit in front of you. But is it amazing that our industry, ever since I've been involved in this 30 years ago, has been very good at working with 18 to 35s. But when it starts to come up to 35s and above, we're not so good. And I think that's where the money is. I think for me with energy, we're very, very focused on that. And I think if I was doing a boutique tomorrow, I would look at modalities. I think strength training is going to be a massive one, because I think CrossFit hasn't had a challenger, and CrossFit has been working as a loose franchise, a licensed agreement, and but it's an amazing modality for me, which hasn't really been done well apart from CrossFit. And I think strength training, focusing on strength training, is going to be massive. It's also a massive lifestyle trend for older people, as we've known since talking. We've both been quite passionate about strength training during our careers, and I've grown up in the industry following the benefits of that for aging populations and independence in later life, and I think that's a modality that could be very, very successful. And I also think mindfulness is going to be a huge trend. Well, it already is a pretty huge trend, but it's going to get even huger after COVID, where recovery and slower methods of training like Pilates, yoga, fusion of those things are going to be massive.
I want to come back to that the sort of demographic, but one of the things, just to close off on the boutiques, is your previous life in Anytime Fitness, being able to expand outside of major cities and other parts of the world, where probably the level of instructors didn't necessarily have to be, not it didn't have to be good, but it could be fairly straightforward in terms of the product that was being offered. With a boutique, it's very much, it's an experience. So yes, you've got the design and the equipment, but the thing that really brings all that together is the instructor. So they've got to be able to entertain, but they've also got to be able to kind of perform whatever it is that you happen to deliver. And my experience, and I've not traveled for quite some time, but my experience is as you sort of come out of some of those main cities, getting that talent even in a regular club is a lot more challenging. So do you see that the people being a part of a sort of a limiting factor to the success of some of these boutiques in some of the kind of developing markets? I guess Spain's not a developing market really, but let's say outside of America and the UK as an example.
Yeah, well, look, it's nearly a bit of a contradiction in terms, isn't it? That the word rock star trainers kind of sprung up in the last few years when we talk about boutiques, and actually when you're scaling, you don't necessarily need rock star trainers in local communities. You need great instigators, social instigators, and people who look after people and care about the community and want to get involved in the community. And they should be able to teach a decent level of class, But look, I learned to teach classes, so if I can be taught, then anybody can be taught. And I was certainly no Jane Fonda, but I was okay at the end. And so I think it's going to be down to a mind change in the industry. If we want to deliver our modular model in Spain, for example, we have to make a commitment, which we've already made, that our staff are going to be the center point of this. Now, whether they're, half part-time or whether they work semi-digitally in a hybrid model, whatever the future holds, and I'm not, the best person to talk about that. I have my views. I think the hybridization of the industry is here to stay. How big will it be? Who knows when people can go back? But we have to commit to, training. We have to commit to training talented people, bringing talented people into the industry. We really need to bring people in who want to make a career out of health and fitness. And the conversation has been more on artificial intelligence, and I get that. I see where that's going to be helpful. But I'm maybe I'm a bit old school in some of this, but my reaction here from people coming back to gyms and our pre-sale that we're doing now in the town where I live has been astounding. It's been staggering. The response from people saying, "Oh, you're opening a gym, but we've just had a pandemic, and it's fantastic. We want to come back. We want to work out with people. We want to socialize." And Latin people can be pretty sociable at the best of times. So I don't think it's a problem as long as you go into it thinking, you make a commitment to develop your people. And, I'm talking with, just to give you an example, we're talking with, with Stacey Vanderveer in the US about, Soul Body from a training point of view on delivering world-class training to trainers to be able to deliver a good level of yoga, Pilates or bar, and something that Les Mills has been doing for years. So it's there, it does exist. But I think it's more than just the training. It's about, are you rewarding your staff? Are you incentivizing your staff? We're having the same conversations about retention in the industry. Have we ever really incentivized our trainers to make sure that people don't leave their club? We've always commissioned people on selling memberships. Do we ever look at commissioning people on saving people and giving them a bonus based on these kind of things? So it's really going into this with the right mindset to say, if we're going to do this, if you want to have trainers and you want to go in and give a lot of classes, you've got to control the quality. And the quality of that, we have the technology to track numbers in classes. We've got the technology to track the intensity of the class. We can use MyZone. We can use other tracking devices to make sure that our members are getting the right level of exercise, et cetera, et cetera. So we can build all that information and we can reward and recognize and develop our trainers of the future to be involved with us. So I think it's something that starts from a whole mindset and cultural positioning of the brand.
Yeah. Do you think that's something that now businesses have to kind of start to invest in that? I know when I came into the industry, there a lot of chains all kind of had some academy, and they had a number of people that did that. They invested in training and education, and I think over the years there are some that still do it, but over the years that seems to be something that's kind of moved away. In fact, some brands they don't even have anybody that's necessarily head of the fitness product, and then you've got the boutiques that have come in and Soul Cycle as an example that's at the top of my head. The amount of training that you would go through to become an instructor is pretty extensive, really. But obviously that comes at a cost. It's not easy to do, particularly when there's pressure on price and the low cost models are dominating. So do you think that does require more of an investment of time and resources? And then leading on from that, do you think that then is going to bring the price up? So, if you want a great experience, you are going to have to pay for that.
No, I absolutely think that. I think, the most important thing is, I think the thing to say is that, if you look back at the 90s, what we were doing in the 90s, we were creating a lot of gyms were running 3 to 4 studios, and they were offering a number of classes, and the members were pretty happy. And I think what happened then was that the next stage of the development of the industry, and as Fitness First, I mean, we were the first to take away swimming pools from gyms. So when Mike Balfour created Fitness First, his vision was created on what could you take away from a club that costs a lot of money but isn't used by all the members. And that philosophy became extremely successful for us. And I remember back in the day, people said, you've got no chance of being successful running a fitness chain with no swimming pool. And, our rationale was only 30% of people were using the pool, but, 100% of people are paying for it. So, the early Fitness First affordable fitness model, which was about £29 a month, so it wasn't kind of really comparable to the low cost of today, started that trend of taking things out to try to make the model more affordable to open and the return on investment, et cetera, et cetera. And then you could say that Anytime Fitness took it another step further, because they took away the reception, they took away the showers, and they had a self-service 24-hour gym model, or have a 24-hour gym model, which has been super successful for them globally, without a doubt. And I'm thinking that maybe now, from some experiences from that convenience model with the boutique model, that somewhere there's a halfway house there where you still have an affordable concept, an affordable platform for a franchisee or an owner operator to run, but you're offering more variety and more scope. And I just think that where we're going with technology, we can't take that human element out of this. And as I said, we're prepared to take that risk because we think the payback is going to be more than worth the initial extra investment or the extra operational challenges, which we use and we're used to doing day to day. So I think it's really going to be a question of changing a little bit. I think now after COVID, people are looking for connections. They're looking for connecting again. And I think if you're going to be running very, very lean or unstaffed facilities, that's not something that I think I'm particularly interested in doing right now, to be fair.
Yeah, it sounds like, using that same example you gave us in the early Fitness First days, it's, what can you take away? And I suppose, the things that have stood out from this conversation is the design and the experience, which can, seemingly can be done quite inexpensively, but, with some creativity. And then, putting that other investment into the people, into the fitness product, which I guess in a lot of cases, that's what people go to gyms to kind of get, really, as well as community, but the fitness aspect, that's what they go to get.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think, I've seen it time and time again. I think, there's so much evidence that people who use group exercise, who have different experiences, stay longer in the club, without a doubt.
So coming back to your, we'll call them boomers or sort of more mature members. We had Rick Mayo on a while ago, and he's sort of evolved his business to just targeting that demographic. And he had some interesting stats about, the disposable income they have and why it's an interesting market. What do you think that what do you think that we're still very much focused in general on the younger demographic? And do you think that's different in Southern Europe? Do you think that that type of model would work particularly well there for different reasons?
Well, I think it can work. I just basically think that we've got to, and it's not just because I'm 57. I think obviously as you get older, you change your outlook a little bit, and you start thinking about different things. You want to stay in shape, but you also are thinking about your health a lot more. But I've always found it interesting, although I suppose I'm a heavy user compared to somebody, an average member of the public, and I have been most of my life. But I've also been determined. I've also been focused a little bit more on the health aspect of it, because I've actually got a chronic illness that I've had since I was 28 years old. And it's not just I was diagnosed with hyperthyroidism when I was 28. It's something that's in my family. My mother had it. My mother's sister had it. My sister's okay. Normally it affects females more than men. But I got it. So I ended up being a high level sports person. I had to change my direction in life because at the time it wasn't quite so well managed as it is now. And I take a tablet, a thyroxine tablet every day, and it's called Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And this is something that affects millions and millions of people around the world. I think 5% of people in the United States, 5% of Spain, 5% of people in the UK. Is it inconvenient? Yes, it is a little bit sometimes. It has been, but I've managed that with exercise and a fitness lifestyle. So, look, I'm not perfect. I live well. I enjoy a glass of wine like most people, but exercise has really, really helped me to manage that, and it's made obviously with a lower thyroid level, you never get it quite right, and the metabolism can be a bit sluggish from time to time. But so I suppose I've not been evangelical about it, but I've always felt that, we're missing a trick a little bit in the industry. So although I was seen as a heavy trainer, there was a reason behind it. More muscle mass, better metabolism. It kickstarts my metabolism. So I probably work out, most days of the week, because if I don't, I notice I get a bit sluggish probably quicker than somebody who doesn't have this illness. So, it's always been a passion of mine to look at that, and I've always been drawn towards people, more towards people doing fitness for their health rather for the aesthetic. The aesthetic is great, looking good, feeling good. I get that completely, but there's a massive opportunity for a healthcare market. And I think this is, without being too dramatic, I mean, after being in this industry for 30 years, I think that the fitness industry now is looking at the best opportunity it's ever had to get the healthcare message across. And I don't mean that. I know if people have been suffering out there in the last year because of COVID, but if you can carry on and get through it, I think we're going to go through a golden age of fitness. And, it's interesting that we talked about, we're talking on a day that F45 goes to the market for $1.5 billion valuation, which is fantastic for the industry. I remember, as I said at the beginning, when we floated on the London stock market in 1998, we went on the junior stock market, and then we went, which was the aim, and then we went on a full listing. And, all those companies went on the stock market for about 10 companies listed, Holmes Place, Sporter, LA Fitness. There was a number of even public companies that went to the market. So it was an incredible moment for investors looking at fitness. And then we had that incredible situation in 2002 on the back of the .com collapse, where all the shares, Fitness First shares included, caught the tailwind of the .com crash. And because our financial stock was so highly valued, it was trading at about £14 at one stage. It was trading on 35, 37 times earnings, which was incredibly spicy, let's say. We were hammered when we gave a bit of bad news in 2002, where if I remember, it was a 28 million profit. The profitability was supposed to come in at 28 million. I think we came in at 24 million, and our share price collapsed. And in the matter of 2 weeks, all of the share prices of all of the listed fitness companies collapsed. And so, why am I telling you this? Well, it's because I remember thinking at the time that, it was obviously unfortunate and bad luck. So when you were talking about, the travails of the fitness clubs, then it really wasn't the operational problems. It was really that there were certainly mistakes made. There was certainly overexpansion. But fundamentally, the crash came about because a lot of these fitness companies, and Fitness First was probably the primary one because it always had the highest valuation, was that we were caught in with the .com, the whole stock market was overvalued. But I also remember thinking, if these times will ever come back, and it's now 2021, and look what's happening now in the industry, F45 going to the market, Planet Fitness are flying, the gym group in the UK is doing well. But I think now is the opportunity from COVID and from an investment community angle, where there's a great opportunity for us as an industry to really, really get the message out there on healthcare. And why would I do differently now than then? Well, it's getting the investment community to understand that fitness is not a fad. And I think we're getting there. I think we've got the platform now. And one of the things I remember saying to myself, if we ever get into this situation again, the public companies have got to keep banging the drum. This is not about just aesthetic. This is not just about looking good. It's great having young people looking great. This is about healthcare. This is about prevention. This is about, giving older people independence in their later life, rather than having a hip operation, which is going to cost the local governments, billions or millions and millions of dollars, pounds, whatever. So I think this is a very exciting moment for us. And let's see if we can take that moment. And so going to the 50 plus or older market, it's a tough market. I don't feel 57. I still play rugby. I still play for the veterans team, very active, lots of friends and family, same as me, like yourself. You're not going to go to an over 50 club. So it's, you can't patronize older people. People want to go and work out. They want to work out hard, but they want expertise. They want somebody like them. So when I'm opening, we just opened a club in Sant Cugat in my hometown here, just outside of Barcelona. And what are we doing this week? We started our pre-sale. And I'll go down to the pre-sale because, you only get one chance to make a first impression, as the saying goes. And I'll go and spend, the first couple of weeks, as much time as I can on the stand with people, talking to the community, getting feedback, understanding how it's being received, and talking to people. And a lot of people come up to me who are more or less my own age, and they're kind of coming up to me saying, look, I'm a little bit concerned about the gym. It's a little bit intimidating. They're going to come up to me, but they're not going to come up to myself at 25 or let's say 26. I obviously didn't have the same empathy when I was 25 and starting out as a trainer in Fitness First as I do now at 57. Understanding that, as you get a bit older, you do have some challenges, although you don't want to admit it. I have 3 kids I have to look after. I have time issues as everyone. So it's very, very simple. You've got to hire more trainers with the empathy or the same age as the people we're trying to attract. And I was talking to someone the other day. We've got a great couple of franchisees in the UK at our Milton Keynes head office club, Rob and Claire. And they've got a 72-year-old trainer in their gym. And guess what? The 72-year-old trainer is in actually very good shape for 72-year-old. And he's attracting all that people as a role model to come into the gym. That's a very simple solution, to attracting those markets. So again, we're making a commitment here to employ trainers of all different ages as role models for the different demographic that you want to represent and that you want to attract.
So, in order to do that, then my guess is that the product itself may have to slightly change, and I suppose to attract people that are older and make it, I guess, financially interesting for somebody to come into. I guess you're not going to get people like that in most cases at the same rate that you would pay someone who's just sort of starting out in the industry. So I suppose that's going to create there's got to be some bigger changes than I suppose just saying we want to go after an older demographic.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because here in Spain, if you work in banks, you get made redundant, I think, at 55. You're out, which when I think I'm 57, it's kind of a scary thought. But that's why it's better to be an entrepreneur down here. But there are thousands and thousands of people right now after COVID who want to sack their boss. There's no doubt about that. You're seeing it in the US, you're seeing it in the UK, you're seeing it in Spain. People are certainly thinking, life's too short. Why do I have to put up with this? Let's change the career. Let's become an entrepreneur. Do that degree that you always wanted to do, or chase that dream that you always had. And I think it's now. So across the board, we're in a very, very interesting moment for this. And the example of that is I know so many people that would be great gym instructors that we could train them. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to go outside of the normal 4 walls of a gym, look for talent, look for people with a lot of world experience, people who are empathetic, and get them to come in and look after the demographic that we're looking to achieve. You're talking about boomers. This is the Mick Jagger generation. How old's Mick Jagger? Mick Jagger's not slowing down. People are not slowing down. People are going to live into their 90s and beyond on a regular basis. Life expectancies in most of the developed world probably have had a blip now, but they will continue to rise. So it's all about making those extra years quality of life. So I think this is an incredible demographic opportunity. As you said, they've got the money, they've got the time, but what they need experience, they need expertise, they need to be made to feel comfortable, but they don't want to be patronized. They want to be trained hard. They don't want to vomit in the workout, in a high intensity type of situation, but they'll work hard. They'll lift weights because they know that the bone. I remember listening to Dennis Kaiser 20 years ago, it might even be 25 years ago, when he said, there'll be coming a day where going to the gym will be like brushing your teeth. And, his analogy, which I thought, is fantastic, is that, people want their teeth to live for the duration of their lifetime, that you want your teeth to stay with you. That's why you clean them every day. So the intervention is, you go and lift weights a few days because you want your bones and your muscles to live for the rest of your life, to keep you moving, to stop you having hip replacements and keep giving you independence. Which is a very scary thing for people to lose, and very costly for healthcare, by the way. And so I think this is an incredible demographic, and I don't think we need to do too much different to capture them, because I think definitely in Spain, I see a lot of people here very active, into their later lives. Is it a quality of life, the Mediterranean diet? A little bit, but we still have the same issues as you have in the US and in the UK. It's not all roses. So, people have stress, people have time constraints, and a lot of people are eating, not the Mediterranean diet, let's say, and a lot of young people are getting obese because of that, and video games. So, but I think it's just really thinking about. I think it comes from the trainer. I really do. I think if you want to capture the slightly older market, you've got to have people to reflect. To reflect that market. Not saying that every 20-year-old or 25-year-old can't speak to a 50-year-old, but it's just a life experience, confidence issue, I think.
I think, looking at the business that you're in, which is a franchise, I guess you're probably better positioned to do that than a sort of a corporate owned business, because, you could probably get someone who is a franchise owner that is of that demographic, that has left the bank, and is active in the business, similar to yourself. So when you are opening, they're around, and they probably could sort of hire and develop a community that probably talks to those people because they're there. Whereas I guess a traditional brand where they may have to, for different reasons, hire younger people that may not have that affinity to that particular audience. So I guess, listening to what you're saying, then, a franchise business would probably do a better job at it than a lot of companies would be able to do.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think it's fair to say it's the backbone of the success of many of the international brands. I mean, if you get a great franchisee owner operator who's at the front of the business driving it, and they tend to come from if they're a demographic, they're not exclusively over 35, but quite a few of them are. But it's definitely very, very strong having that person there who's in the community, who's working with the local communities, with the members, and is there motivating their staff. I think it's a totally win-win situation for franchise networks.
So what do you see as kind of where things are going next certainly within the markets you operate? You're responsible for the international expansion of energy and the various products within that brand. What are you coming off the back of the pandemic, hopefully, although, probably reading the news today, hopefully we're not going into something again, but assuming things start opening up, what are some of the models that you think are going to be are going to thrive? What are some of the, I guess, differences that we're going to start seeing that probably we didn't see before? And what's your prediction for the next few years for the industry?
Yeah, well, I think we think the box in the box is going to be an interesting model for the industry. I think it's certainly something that's going to add more experiences to for the gyms, giving the members that option. I think Energy Fitness has created a company, Empowered Brands, which has been set up to look at franchising opportunities across the fitness franchise world, and I think the multi-brand franchise businesses will grow. I mean, obviously, Exponential are doing very well, and are also looking to go to market, which is very exciting for them and for the industry, I think, as a whole. And although they've got 8 brands, and it's a very, very interesting concepts that they're doing right now. Empowered Brands has been set up to look at opportunities across different channels, not exclusively studios, but potentially other fitness franchise opportunities. So I think that's what where Energy Fitness is going longer term. Will be coming in the multi-franchise business, where we're looking at also technology-driven concepts. We think that the digital market will. I think if we get it right, everything's going to grow. People are saying, is it digital? How much is it going to be? Is it hybridization? Yes, it is. It's all of this. It's all of these things, and it's they say a high tide, all boats float in a high tide, and I think we're going to experience the kick here now in the next few years. And it's up to us to take advantage of that. But I think from our point of view, we see a combination of the box in the box, We see a combination of multi-channel companies doing well. It makes a lot of sense. If you're trying to sell a McDonald's franchise to a vegan, I don't think you're going to get very far, selling it. And if you're looking at different investment levels across different potential franchise leads, then it makes a lot of sense to develop different products under the umbrella of a franchise company. And in the case of Energy Fitness, one of the things that was attractive to me, not least because I met some great people there, and Jan, that we identified with as a total entrepreneur and somebody with a great spirit for doing entrepreneurial projects. But we like the fact that they've got 17 years of franchise experience. So, one of the things for Empowered Brands now is to develop under that umbrella, different opportunities where we could have an effect on the fitness industry and on developing healthcare, on developing digitally driven verticals. And then there's the usual suspects, which could be, it could be boutique models coming up in the future. Depending on how those things work out. There's still a little bit of the jury's out a little bit about the longevity of the boutique model. We still haven't seen that. I'm a big supporter of boutique fitness, and I've seen the potential it has, but there's also a little bit of a question mark, I guess, about, okay, let's see how it goes in 2 years' time. The benefits of boutique fitness is the cost of entry is a lot lower than opening a full-size gym in most cases, not in every case, in most cases. The downside is that it's a little bit of a narrower channel and experience for the end user. Now, if you've got a great trainer and a great level of experience every time, then you can avoid potential boredom or stale. So you can build a studio to have variety, but there is a limitation there. So there are pros and cons. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one goes. So we feel as a group that having the opportunity to develop, in Spain, we're starting with this box in a box type of scenario to see how that goes. We've had a great reception in the first weeks of our pre-sale here, and people in the UK will be able to also use that same model in the future. And the development of an umbrella company where we can continue to evolve and look at different fitness franchising opportunities to our network, because we've got real estate teams in the UK who are great at finding real estate. We've got great training. We've got Lauren Moat in our training department who wrote the award-winning Take the Stage training. This is world-class training that I think can go global with no problem at all, and we've got 100 clubs in the UK, and we had a bit of a joke with Jan to say, Jan, you've only got 100 clubs, why have you only got 100 clubs? We've got to take this to the world. And he laughed, and we agreed that was the case. And I believe we have something here which is quite special. So, using that platform that the UK already has, being able to use the experience of a team across all our HR and legal team, which for a franchise network is very important, having an operations team supporting franchisees and knowing how to do that, making sure that the franchisee is profitable, because you can talk about experience and you can talk about design all day, but if you're not making money in a franchise network, you've got some serious trouble, I can tell you. So, first of all, it's got to be profitable. Then all those other things we talked about come into play. So, we think that we've got the infrastructure to be able to take this globally into different markets, using the experience and the platform and the umbrella business that Energy has developed over 17 years. And it's not all easy, and all the big franchisee groups would probably say the same. How do you what's the essence of a great franchisor? Well, there's a lot of different parts of that, but having the experience and dealing with franchisees and making sure that they make money is really, really the most important thing. And then everything else can fall into place.
So, Rod, just a couple of questions then before we wrap up. If people are interested in the in your franchise business,
wherever it is, how to, what is that you're, what are you offering, and how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think one of the things we're looking to do is focus very much in. We're looking at a global franchise expansion for Energy Fitness. First and foremost, we're focusing in Europe. I'm very keen to create opportunities in France and Germany, Italy, Benelux as our main interest in Europe. Obviously from Barcelona, we're only an hour from France where I live. So, and I'm up there for a lot of rugby. So, France is a great opportunity. It's a country which is growing very, very well in fitness franchising. So we're very keen to go there. And also in Italy, there's a lot of, similar trends, as we've said before, in Italy. So we're going to use the club in Barcelona as a flagship club. It's going to be our flagship for international expansion. We still got the UK, obviously, to take people to as well, but we see the model in Spain being a very good concept for European countries. And then further afield, I mean, looking at the Asian markets, I have some good experience in Australia and in the Far East, on Hong Kong and Singapore, and we're looking at Southeast Asia. And definitely Japan as potential opportunities that are interesting. So, I'm here in Barcelona. We encourage, we're looking for groups who are interested in health and fitness, wellness, developing possibly multi-channeled franchise brands in the coming years. Groups who are expert, not necessarily in gyms, but maybe from a retail background, which is also interesting. Restaurants, retail. But we're always looking for great partners for with many different backgrounds. So there isn't a typical background, to do this, because we would provide all the training, all the backup, all the tools and needs for each of those markets, and have a team of people behind them every step of the way. I mean, one of the things we say in Energy Fitness, you're in business but not on your own, which is, in franchising is very true. You are an entrepreneur, I believe. You take a lot of risks by setting up a franchise, but you've got somebody behind you in a network that's proven to work, in a concept that's been given proof of success, which makes that journey less lonely and far more enjoyable in my point of view. So I'm here in Barcelona. If people want to contact me, then just by email I'm Rod at energyfitnessiberia.com. And we can have a chat. But very happy to look at opportunities. I think COVID has obviously closed down the world pretty much, but happy to have discussions about potential territory opportunities in most parts of the world.
Excellent. And we'll put some details and website and those contact details in the show notes, and for anyone to contact you through that way as well. So look, final question, Rod. Escape Your Limits is about escaping what you believed is impossible and gone on to make it possible. What would be a memorable example of you escaping your own personal limits? Crikey.
That's a good one. Well, look, a good example of escaping personal limits. Well, I think I'd like to say that I've always been quite courageous, and the fact that I'm an immigrant living in Spain. I took a big risk coming over here with the family in 2007. I've been living in Barcelona since 2007. So for me that was a big step. It's not all been plain sailing, and there are ups and downs, but it's very, very rewarding to live in a foreign country and understand different cultures and different traditions. My wife, Caroline, who is from Hong Kong, and her parents were from the Philippines, who emigrated to Hong Kong, and we met in London. So, we're a bit of a mixed family. With an international aspect. My brother-in-law lives in Hong Kong. My parents live in the UK, and we've got family in Arizona, in Chandler, just outside of Phoenix. So we're pretty, and our mother lives in Frankfurt, in Germany. So we're all over the place. So for me, the the fitness first years, I suppose, putting my hand up and going into Europe and taking those opportunities as they came up, they were there, but you had to kind of take them. So, for me, that kind of started this wanderlust of wanting to discover and look at different cultures and different countries. So, arriving in Barcelona in 1998 to open the first clubs in Spain and in Madrid gave me, it was just an exhilarating experience and something that, I'll never forget. And it's funny now that, we're continuing that journey now. Even now we're opening, we're starting a new chapter with Energy Fitness in Spain. We got our first club in pre-sale after a pandemic. I've not been in an Energy Fitness club in my life, and I bought the master franchise for Spain and Portugal with George Altenbos, my partner. And we've both not been in an energy club. So how do you work that one out? So either we're very smart or we're very stupid, and time will tell. But you get a feeling about stuff. You get a feeling about stuff. I don't need to really go into a club to see the physical side, because for me, what we've bought into is exactly that culture and that and the ethos that we were so much on the same page. So we'll sort of see.
Well, I've known you for probably about 20 years, and I've certainly seen you go through a lot of ups and downs and some some very difficult times, and I've also seen you bounce back a number of times and come back very, very strong. So I guess you're a true example of an entrepreneur, and I'm very excited about this new venture you're about to embark on, and I wish you all the success in that, Rod. So thank you very much for joining us today.
No, you're welcome, and thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, then please go over to iTunes and subscribe to the Escape Your Limits podcast. Leave a review, leave a comment. It really would help us a lot to continue to keep these going.